العمر يوم فلتحيا مخلدا ذكرى سعيدة. قل للمحبة بسم الله وابدأ سعادة جديدة. كالغيث كن أملا وجد من دون مقياس. سقيا الجمال تبثها لتطيب أنفاس. عظم قلوب الناس الناس للناس. كالغيث كن سببا لتحيي قلب إنسان. جد بالذي تحسنه مهما كان مهما كان. أوليس يجزى محسن إلا بإحسان. قلبي اطمأن فكلنا كالغيث للغير. ما زالت الدنيا بخير.
من آدم جئنا ومن حواء الرحمة أجمل ما فينا. نعطف ونحب ونشتاق تتشابه جل أمانينا. للخير نميل بفطرتنا للقيم برانا بارينا. كنا رجلا صرنا أمما نرقى برقي مبادئنا. بعدل الله نقيم حياة لحاضرنا واتينا. بنو حواء معا شركاء على قيم نبينا. بعدل الله نقيم حياة لحاضرنا واتينا. بنو حواء معا شركاء على قيم نبينا. قيم كبرى لما نعليها تعلينا. قيم واحدة تجمعنا. رب الكون بها أوصانا. نتعايش بالعدل سويا مهما نتباين ألوانا. لا يعدم قوتا أفقارنا. لا يقهر نفسا أقوانا. فتعالوا نملأ عالمنا إخلاصا بذلا إتقانا. بعدل الله نقيم حياة
So, I hope my voice is clear now.
Yes.
Okay, great.
We
So,
have a lot
welcome everyone. Hope you're
other
doing great.
video.
Let me first introduce myself. Okay.
Sorry, we have another video.
Okay.
The child will die from the effects of.
So,
Did you know that in the next 60 seconds, a child will die from the effects of climate change?
Climate change isn't just about melting ice caps or raising sea levels. It is about the very air we breathe.
and the impact it's having on our health.
Rising temperatures are linked to increased cases of asthma, respiratory diseases, and also allergies.
Not to mention the spread of infectious diseases, as changing climates create new breeding grounds for pathogens.
And let's not forget about the toll it takes on our mental health. The anxiety, depression, and trauma that is caused by natural disasters and environmental uncertainty.
But there is a hope. Every and each one of us can make a difference, whether by reducing our carbon footprint, advocating for change, or supporting policies that protect our planet and our own health.
Climate change, is it only an environmental condition? Are you willing to know more about that? Join us in our upcoming webinar, a collaborative efforts between IVPN student and EPSF.
Join us for an engaging webinar on climate change advocacy and its impact on health, exploring effective strategies for driving meaningful environmental and public health action.
Let's work together to heal our planet and ourselves. The time to act is now.
So can I start now? Okay, so welcome everyone. Hope you are doing great. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Mariam Hamadi. I'm the contact person of EPSF Egypt. So welcome to the climate change webinar. It's a collaborative effort between EPSF, IPSF, IVPN students, IVPN Global Health, and WHO Egypt. As we will highlight the prevention strategies for climate change, the climate change effect on our environment and different life aspects, and finally the climate change adaptation and resilience. So we will start with the representatives talk, starting with EPSF representative talk, Mr. Abdurrahman Yunus, EPSF Public Health Chairperson. Mr. Abdurrahman, the floor is yours.
Okay. Is my voice clear now, guys?
Yeah, it's clear.
That's clear.
We react or something?
It's clear.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, hello. Thanks, Mariam, for giving the floor. My name is Abdulrahman Yunus, EPSF Public Health Chairperson for the mandate 23-24. Firstly, I'm talking beyond EPSF, or the Egyptian Pharmaceutical Student Federation, that was founded at 1982 with one aim to provide the pharmacist and the pharmacy student what they need to take what's needed from them. And talking beyond my portfolio, public health, we are working mainly on two big campaigns. The biggest campaign is blood donation. It's the biggest blood donation campaign from 12 years, from 2012 at Egypt, in collaboration with MOH, or Ministry of Health Egypt. Also, we are working on another initiative. It's the RISE project. The previous video or the first video we have previewed for you that was talking about this project. This project is divided into two aspects: the humanitarian, firstly, and secondly, the environmental. And now we are at a small part of a biggest project or a biggest photo, that is the environmental aspect. We are here in collaboration efforts between us and IVPN students to organize a webinar to spot the light or to advocate the climate change problem. So I'm welcoming you, everyone. Hope you have a fruitful meeting or a fruitful webinar with us. Thanks, Ahmed, for this collaboration effort. Thanks, IVPN. Thanks all doctors and speakers and organizations with us. I hope you have a great 2 hours with us. Thanks, Mariam. You can take the floor.
Thanks, Abdurrahman, for your kind words. So proceeding to IVPN representative, Mr. Ahmed Saeed, IVPN students public health chairperson. So Mr. Ahmed, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mariam, for your amazing introduction. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, entitled Climate Change, Is It Only an Environmental Condition? And also, my name is Ahmed Saeed. I'm a chairperson of public health at IVPN student. Also, I'm a senior pharmacy student or PharmD student. Okay, on this webinar, inshallah, we will be discussing the linkage between the public health or the health and the climate change. and how the link is being happening in the future or on long term in the future. Also, will be unclearing the prevention strategies and the solutions for this problem. And also, before starting the webinar, I would love to tell you that the webinar will be recorded on our website. You could access the recording after the end of the webinar. And also, we will be sending the link for this recording after the session, inshallah. Also, you could join us at IVPN network throughout our website, through any of our listserv. So that's it. Thank you so much for every speaker and every participant in this webinar. Hope you have a great time with us, and it will be, inshallah, a fruitful and impactful webinar, inshallah. The floor is yours, Mari.
Thanks, Dr. Ahmed, for your kind words. So, proceeding to our first session, Prevention Strategies for Climate Change, which will be presented by Dr. Mohammed Aissam, WHO Egypt Public Health Officer and WHO Egypt Climate Change Youth Associate. So, Dr. Mohammed, you can start now.
Thank you, Mariam. I will just share my screen one moment. Okay. You can see the screen, right? Okay, perfect.
Yes, clear.
Yes, clear.
So yes, hi everyone. As Mariam mentioned, my name is Mohammed Isa. I am Public Health Officer at the World Health Organization Egypt Country Office. I'm very happy to be with you today, and it's very interesting to be part of such webinars to speak about the interlinkages between climate change and health in general. And today we'll be speaking also about the prevention strategies for climate change. So maybe we can start by speaking just about the overview of the presentation, what we'll be speaking about. We'll be speaking about introduction to climate change, what are the greenhouse gas emissions and how they are produced, the health impacts of climate change, our role in general as members of the society in terms of climate mitigation and adaptation, and our specific roles, for example, when it comes to pharmacy, when it comes to healthcare in general, in terms of the climate mitigation and adaptation. So in order to start, so first, when it comes to climate change, so there is usually the misconception about the difference between climate change and weather. So for example, if we're saying that today the weather is hot, or tomorrow the weather is cold, or it's windy, or there are clouds, etc. So this is an explanation or an elaboration of the weather and not of the climate. Why? Because the weather is more of the short-term changes that happen in our everyday life. So tomorrow, for example, it's a bit hotter. Today it's a bit colder. Next week it's a bit like there is more wind, etc. So this is the weather. However, what is the climate? As it mentioned here, the climate change, it refers to the long-term shifts in temperature and weather patterns. So for example, what's happening today, what's happening tomorrow, what's happening next week, what's happening next year, etc. So this brings a pattern. So it helps us understand how the climate is changing on the long term. So in order to understand it better, we can say that the weather is the short-term impact and the climate is the long-term impact or the long-term change. And we derive our information when it comes to the climate change, we derive it from the weather. So as you can see here, such shifts can be natural due to changes in the sun's activity or large volcanic eruptions. And this is another misconception that people might think that climate change is only because of humans. And this is not correct. Climate change has been happening since forever. It has always been happening, usually because of the natural changes. However, why do we care much about climate change and why do we speak much about the human's contribution to climate change? Because our contribution to this crisis is much, much, much bigger than the natural contribution. This is specifically since the 1800s, human activities have been the main drivers of climate change, primarily due to burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas. So here, since the 1800s and since usually the Industrial Revolution, when people thought, okay, we need to focus more on the industry, we need to focus more on the economy. So this led to this shift in the human focus towards more of the economic benefits and forgetting about our natural resources. Despite the fact that actually, like economics, when we come to think about it, it's about the scarcity of resources. So it's about how to use your scarce resources in the most efficient way to produce the highest output. However, this economic thinking did not very much align with the, or like I would say, the humans thinking during the Industrial Revolution did not very much align with the importance of the preservation of our natural resources. And this led to the, I would say, the huge exacerbation of the climate crisis. And here comes the point, what are the causes of climate change? So for example, generating power, such as we mentioned, the burning of the fossil fuels, the manufacturing process itself and the industry, cutting down forests and changing or altering the biodiversity. And this brings us to another aspect, which is the triple planetary crisis. So whenever you hear about climate change is not a crisis that exists in silos, but it is a crisis that's interlinked with two other crises linked to the environment. So climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss. So the three together contribute to the triple planetary crisis as a whole. So cutting down forests, this is a biodiversity loss that leads to an exacerbation of another crisis, which is the climate change. Using transportation, that's mainly also driven by petroleum, by oil, etc. Producing food, and this does not mean that we should stop food production, but it means the shift in the food systems. Powering buildings and generally consuming too much. And this brings us to the aspect that we mentioned regarding the scarcity of resources and how much we consume our scarce resources. So next slide is the social and economic impact of climate change. So we started with the very first thing, what is climate change? And like what leads to climate change? However, now climate change exists and we need to go to the next step, which is the impact of climate change. And let's start with the impacts that are not directly related to health. So as you can see here, for example, there is the cost of adapting coastal areas to rising sea levels. Adaptation here, it's more of manufacturing, it's more of doing things that would stop these cities or these coastal areas from being flooded. So this is a huge cost that the economy will bear and will be very much of an overwhelming burden, specifically for example, least developed states or for developing countries, lower middle income countries, etc. So that's one. Loss of the capacity to work due to heat. And this contributes to the aspect of labor productivity. And there has been many studies, specifically in the European region, regarding how climate change and specifically heat waves have been contributing to a decrease in the labor productivity. So here our thoughts about the economy. When we're exposed to heat, when we're exposed to global warming, when we're exposed to more of the climate change, this would decrease our productivity, and this would lead to negative social and economic impacts. 3, more wars to gain access to limited resources. This is specifically in areas where there is scarcity of food, scarcity of water, etc. And this is actually the result of a climate change. So it's a vicious cycle. People deplete the resources. This leads to climate change, which leads to the scarcity of food, scarcity of water, leading to food and water insecurity. And then wars happen because, again, we're seeking these resources, although we could have preserved them from the beginning in the correct way. And this brings us to the point where the fresh water will be in short supply in some areas. This will lead also to that diseases will spread due to higher temperatures, specifically because of vector-borne diseases, etc. Extreme meteorological phenomena will cause widespread poverty. This is because actually of the much damage that is happening due to extreme weather events. So if you remember, I believe it was last year, the floods that has been happening in Pakistan, I guess in June or July, in the monsoon season. So this resulted in severe detrimental impacts on not just the health systems, but the whole infrastructure in the country, which may lead to people losing their jobs, people losing their sources of income, and thus getting more into the poverty or striking the poverty threshold. The prices of the basic foodstuff and consumer goods will rise. And this is also from the economic perspective, because it's more about supply and demand. If we're speaking that there is food and water insecurity, this means that there will be less crops. So as long as there's less supply of crops, still there is huge demand because this is our food. This is how we survive. So in the presence of high demand, in the presence of low supply, this means that the prices will increase. This might result in the inflation and result in the negative economic impacts. And this is also linked to the shrinking productivity of harvests, as I mentioned, and relocation of whole towns, which can be explained in terms of the internal and external climate-induced mobility or climate-induced migration, where people actually leave their cities, leave their countries in order to go to places where they can live safely, where they can have enough food, enough water, etc. Also not just enough, but also in terms of the safety of the food and water. So this is generally the social and economic impact of climate change that impacts our everyday lives. However, how did this happen and how did it start? This starts from the greenhouse effect, and I believe many of you might have heard about it. So what happens is that the sun provides us with the radiation, which is responsible for the light, responsible for the heat, responsible for our lives in general. So most of this radiation is absorbed by the Earth's surface, and it's responsible for the warmth of the Earth's surface. So without this radiation, it would just be super cold, deadly cold. So this radiation is absorbed by the Earth's surface and it warms it. And some of the solar radiation is reflected by the Earth in the atmosphere and goes back outside. However, some of the infrared radiation passes through the atmosphere, some is absorbed and re-emitted in all directions by the greenhouse gas molecules. And the effect of this is to warm the Earth's surface and the lower atmosphere, and the infrared radiation is emitted by the Earth's surface. In order to explain all of this, what happens is that this atmosphere is built upon our greenhouse gases. The greenhouse gases are important to a certain limit in order to conserve or preserve this energy within the Earth's surface. However, as the number or as the concentration of the greenhouse gases increase, this will mean that we will be collecting more of the radiation and keeping it within the Earth's surface, which technically results in the global warming and results in the climate change. So it's a proportional thing. As these molecules or these greenhouse gas emissions increase, this will lead to higher amount of radiation, higher temperatures, and consequently climate change. Here, these are some facts from the World Meteorological Organization, which shows us that carbon dioxide, which is one of the most important greenhouse gas emissions, in 2021 was 149% higher than the pre-industrial levels. And from 2011 to 2020, 48% of emissions from human activities accumulated in the atmosphere, 26% in the ocean, and 29% on land. So everyone is affected, like even underwater, above, on the land, etc. All of these are affected by the human activities and their contribution to climate change. And 80% from 1990 to 2021, heating impacts of the long-lived greenhouse gases increased by 49%, and 80% of these were due to carbon dioxide. The average global temperature is now more than 1.1 degrees above the 1850-1900 pre-industrial average. And that's why everyone is saying that we need to limit the increase in climate change or increase in temperatures to 1.5 degrees. This is important because people might think we can stop climate change. We cannot stop it, but it's more of limiting the climate change. This is technically what happened because climate will continue on changing, whether because of human activities, whether because of natural activities. However, we want to keep to the natural side and decrease our contribution as humans to the exacerbated climate change. The annual increase in methane in 2020, 2021, 15 and 18 ppb respectively, are the largest concentration increases on record within these 2 years. And finally, human activities are responsible for more than 40% of the emissions of nitrous oxide in the atmosphere. So this shows our contributions, and this shows how much of a crisis that we're facing because of the greenhouse gas emissions and how they are contributing to the climate change. So now, as we dive deeper, we have spoken about the impact of the climate change, the social and economic impact. However, there are impacts that are directly related to health. So as you can see here, we have the climate change, which can be present in the form of more extreme weathers, such as the floods, the droughts, etc. Rising temperature, such as, for example, the heat waves as well, increasing greenhouse gas emission levels, and the rising sea levels. So these may lead to mental health impacts in the form of stress and anxiety, depression, sense of loss, post-traumatic stress disorder, and strains on social relationships. And also they may affect our determinants of health. So they can affect our determinants of health. As you can see here, there is air pollution and increasing allergens, which can lead to asthma, allergies, cardiovascular and respiratory diseases, extreme heat, which can lead to heat-related illnesses and death, cardiovascular failure, drought, where the water supply impacts, and dust storms and the valley fever, environmental degradation, as we mentioned, when it comes to biodiversity loss, leading to forced migration, civil conflict, and of course, loss of jobs and income, wildfires, and smoke. This technically does not happen very much in Egypt, but happen in places where there are more forests, which can lead to injuries, fatalities, loss of homes, cardiovascular respiratory diseases, degraded living conditions and social inequities, because some people live in areas, for example, where there are good natural resources, where there is no conflicts, where there is food and water security, etc. So these inequities or these degraded living conditions in some areas and other areas not, this will lead to exacerbation of racial and health inequities and vulnerabilities and loss of employment. Changes in vector ecology, such as Lyme disease, West Nile virus, hantavirus, malaria, and encephalitis. There's food system impacts as well, not just in terms of food security, but also in terms of food safety, leading to malnutrition. And of course, this will lead to higher food prices. And of course, there might be foodborne illnesses, severe weather and floods, which are the extreme weather events, which can lead to injuries, fatalities, loss of homes, indoor fungi and mold. And last but not least, the water quality impacts with the harmful algal blooms, campylobacteriosis, cryptosporidosis, and leptospirosis. So all these are different impacts, whether on the land, whether on the water, whether on the air, that might impact the health directly through the injuries and death, or might impact the health indirectly through impacting the different determinants of health in our lives. Okay, so as you can see here, this is another example that shows the impact on the medical and physical health. Let's forget about medical, physical health. There is changes in the fitness and activity level. As we mentioned, the heat-related illness, allergies, increased exposure to vector and waterborne diseases. The mental health, as we said, stress and anxiety, depression, etc. And the community health itself, leading to increased interpersonal aggression, violence, crime, social instability, and decreased community cohesion. Why did I bring this slide specifically? Because this shows that climate change is impacting every aspect of the health. Because when you get to know the WHO definition of health, it's the state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not just the absence of disease or infirmity. So all of these, or like the climate change and its determinants, they impact the physical health, they impact the mental health, and they impact the social well-being or the community health. And as you can see here, this part specifically, this is an example of the vulnerable groups, because everyone is vulnerable to climate change. However, we need to take into consideration that there are more vulnerable groups, such as women, youth, older people, people with pre-existing medical conditions, people living with disabilities, etc. So all of these are more vulnerable to the negative impacts of climate change. And that's why it's very important to include them and engage them when we get to raise the awareness about climate change, and when we get to spread messages about what we need to do about climate change and how can we address it, whether for the less vulnerable groups or the more vulnerable groups. And this is a very important, I would say, slide or example from the WHO, which shows here that you have vulnerability factors. These are presented in the form of demographic factors. For example, when we have been mentioning, let's say, a man and a woman can be more vulnerable to climate change. Someone's living in a certain area can be more vulnerable to climate change, etc. So demographic characteristics, geographical characteristics, biological factors, and your health status, whether you have a pre-existing health condition, as we mentioned, socio-political and socio-economic situation, the health system capacity. And this brings us to the 6 building blocks of health systems, where climate change can impact the health workforce, can impact the leadership and governance, can impact the service delivery, can impact health financing, can impact the access to medical products, technologies, etc., and can impact the health information systems. All of these are impacted by climate change, and if we take them or dive in depth more about how they can impact them, if we speak about leadership and governance, the climate change, when it happens or when it's exacerbated, This might lead to, for example, political leaders or decision makers to direct the focus only on climate change. So here, directing focus towards climate change is a good thing. However, directing the focus totally and only on climate change, this is the bad thing, because this would derive the focus from other areas that also need special attention as well. So that's one. The health workforce, it increases the burden on the health workforce, especially when there are more clinical cases and there are more conditions that are exacerbated by the climate change, and thus would need more medical attention. It would impact the health financing, because this would mean that we need more budget and more financing for the climate change mitigation and adaptation, which we'll be speaking about later, and this might decrease the budget allocated to the health services. So these are just examples of how the climate change would impact our health systems. And of course, as you can see here, the gender inequity, as we mentioned already. And here, this is the vulnerability factors. These are the factors that exist and you might have already, regardless of the climate change. However, there is the hazard itself, the climate change itself, through extreme weather events, heat, sea level rise, air pollution, bacterial distribution and ecology, water scarcity, and reduced food production. And lastly, the exposure. So the hazard exists and you exist with the vulnerability factors. However, what is the link? How can the hazards affect your vulnerability factors? This is through the exposure pathway, through the people and communities, through the health workforce, how the infrastructure is created, the energy, water, food, and health systems. And this brings us to the point that when we get to work on the adaptation for the climate change, let's say in Egypt, we have this equation where we divide the risk by the exposure, by the hazard itself, divided or like multiply them to each other, dividing them by the capacity to cope or the capacity to adapt, to identify our risk, where does it stand, where our hazards stand in terms of the climate change, in the presence of the vulnerability factors already, and in the presence of the exposure pathways. And all of these together, the vulnerability together with the hazard, together with the exposure, may lead to these health outcomes, which are reflected in the form of non-communicable and communicable diseases, and also the impacts on the health systems, as we mentioned already. So here, this brings us to the point. Okay, we now understand about climate change. We now understand what is climate change, what are the contributors, what are the greenhouse gas emissions, how climate change impacts our society, our economy, and our health, whether directly or indirectly. However, what can we do about it? So generally, there are two pathways when it comes to addressing or tackling climate change. The first pathway is the adaptation. This is technically the meaning of the idea of adaptation, is that you know climate change is happening and you just need to adapt to it. So you just change things that does not reduce climate change, but would technically reduce the impact of climate change on yourself. So it involves modifying our decisions, activities, and ways of thinking to adjust to a changing climate. Where our goals would be increasing our capacity to adapt, as I mentioned already, when we mentioned the division, risk times exposure times vulnerability, divided by the capacity to cope or adapt. So increasing our capacity to adapt, improving our ability to thrive under different climate conditions, including extreme weather events, and building resilience to extreme weather and climate change. The examples would be forest protection, infrastructure and building design, and flood protection. And here, changing agricultural practices, for example, planting different crops to respond to changing growing seasons. So we're just dealing with the changing climate. The climate is changing, so we're just changing our agricultural practices as a response to this changing climate. And planting a variety of crops to reduce damage from pests that could migrate northward. However, what is the other side, and what do other people do? It is the mitigation, which is reducing the main causes of the climate change. So it's not just about dealing with the symptoms of climate change, but dealing with the root causes of the climate change. And technically, this focus on, as we mentioned here, the goal is cutting down the greenhouse gas emissions. The example would be energy efficient technology, sustainable transportation, renewable energy, industrial process improvement, and creating community and home gardens through increasing local agricultural capacity. When it comes to Egypt, Egypt mainly focuses, even when it comes to the COPs, which is the Climate Change Conference of Parties that happens every year, Egypt, together with the African states, together with the Arab states, together with the developing and low and middle income countries, our main focus in the negotiations is the adaptation, not the mitigation. This does not mean that we do not include mitigation. Yes, we include mitigation. Yes, we understand we need to work on mitigation. However, we're not high emitters as developing countries. We're more of the people who are responding to the impacts of the climate change that are produced or resulting from greenhouse gas emissions produced by the developed countries. So our main focus is usually on adaptation, with less focus, I would say, on the mitigation. Okay. Next slide. So here, when it comes to the mitigation adaptation to climate change specifically, as we mentioned, the mitigation is reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, and adaptation reducing our vulnerability to climate change, which is part of the equation that we mentioned. So this is an example of what we can do. For example, the energy efficiency, working on the renewable energy, working on the agriculture and the industrial practices. And these are different examples of what can be done, whether on the mitigation side or the adaptation side, that can be done by us. And here, this is an example of what we can do. It's a very nice diagram that I have seen, and I thought it would be useful to share as well. So you can see what you can do. Of course, you can dive deeper into the the map, but just focus on the main parts. So we have here, for example, have an energy audit or save power, and consequently, this will save money. Be a catalyst by learning more, by voting, for example, when it comes to certain decisions regarding climate, by talking and encouraging friends, work, and school, forcing yourself to change your practices, be strong when it comes to your advocacy. For example, planting trees, eating less meat, because the meat itself, the supply chain, and how we produce our food systems that I would say are mainly based on meat, these are usually unsustainable practices. And that's why we, or many people who work in the climate change arena, they focus on advocating towards the plant-based food systems. And by plant-based, it does not mean that people should not eat meat. It means that the plant should be the main part of the meal, together with the less contribution from the meat side. And generally using less, buying local food, focusing on changing things in our homes, such as the bulbs, the appliances, the electricity, the dryers, etc. Switching to green power, and changing our traveling, or the traveling practices in general. So here, when it comes to the healthcare, so now we spoke about how climate change is impacting our social and economic determinants, how it's impacting our health directly and indirectly. We spoke about the different aspects of how we deal with climate change through mitigation and adaptation. However, when it comes to healthcare specifically and climate change. So as you can see here, climate change impacts everyone else. Climate change is one of the greatest threats to our health today. And according to one of the publications in The Lancet, it has been considered as the greatest threat to humanity of the 21st century. In addition, climate change can lead to temperature-related illnesses and death, infectious diseases, injuries, and illnesses due to extreme weather events and waterborne diseases. And we already spoke about the vulnerable groups when it comes to the age, when it comes to the gender, when it comes to people with pre-existing medical conditions, etc. And while seeking to do good as healthcare professionals, healthcare has a responsibility to avoid doing harm. And this is technically one of the principles, or one of the ethics of the medical practice in general, the ethics of doing no harm. And this brings us to the aspect that healthcare, they considered that if it was a country, it would be the 5th highest contributor to the global greenhouse gas emissions. So this shows how much our health systems are contributing to climate change. And this shows also that healthcare is in a unique position to address climate change, whether through changing how the health systems function, changing things about our hospitals, etc., and focusing on the healthcare economic, political, and moral influence, which can rebrand climate change as the public health issue. And this brings us to the aspects, and here I wouldn't say not just the pharmaceutical sector, but the healthcare sector in general. How does it contribute to climate change? So firstly, energy consumption, where the high energy usage in pharmacy facilities, and by facilities, it's not just the pharmacies, but generally any healthcare facility, I would say, for lighting, heating, and cooling, in addition to energy-intensive equipment, such as refrigerators for storing medications, such as vaccines, etc. There is the medication waste, where disposal of expired or unused medications contribute to pharmaceutical waste, which can contribute to the contamination of the water supply. packaging waste, where the excessive packaging of medications, including blister packs and plastic containers, lead to increased plastic waste. Transportation emissions, especially when it comes to the transportation of different medications. Chemical pollution during the production and disposal of pharmaceuticals, and thus harming the environment and the ecosystem. The water-intensive processes in pharmaceutical manufacturing, contributing to overall water consumption and water scarcity. Supply chain carbon footprint, the complex pharmaceutical supply chain, where the multiple stages of production, transportation, distribution, all contribute to the carbon emissions, and the usage of single-use items, which actually do not very much align with the concept of the reuse or the recycle. And this brings us to the question, what can the pharmaceutical or the healthcare sector as a whole do to tackle the climate change or their contributions to climate change? So promoting sustainable practices through advocating for and implementing energy efficient measures in pharmacy facilities, such as using LED lighting and energy efficient appliances. Encourage the use of renewable energy sources like solar panels or wind turbines. Adopt sustainable water management practices to reduce the water usage and promote conservation. This is when it comes to the practice itself. Regarding pharmaceutical waste, educate the patients and educate generally the healthcare workforce on the proper medication disposal methods to prevent pharmaceutical pollution. Implement medication take-back programs or provide resources for safe disposal, and optimizing medication dispensing practices to reduce overprescribing. And advocating for eco-friendly packaging through advocating for the use of minimal and recyclable packaging materials, and encouraging pharmaceutical companies to adopt sustainable packaging practices. And finally, supporting sustainable drug development through promoting the use and the development of environmentally friendly drug formulations, and advocating for green chemistry principles in the R&D or the research and development. This was the last slide, but there is also something about the educating patients and colleagues, which is something that we as students can do through raising awareness, conducting awareness campaigns, whether online or in person, where we get to speak not just to the healthcare workforce or get to speak to the patients, but generally speak to the different target groups or the beneficiaries, provide information eco-friendly alternatives, and incorporate the environmental considerations into our conversations with the patients and other healthcare sector stakeholders, engaging in the policy advocacy and advocate for policy that promotes sustainability through creating your own policy briefs. And I believe this is something that can be done between, for example, EPSF and IVPN, in which you can work together on a policy brief or a policy document that can speak about where you see climate change and health and what we can do about them, and participate in local, national, international efforts to address climate change, collaborating with other stakeholders, not just the healthcare sector, but also outside the healthcare sector, because climate change is technically a crisis that's affecting everyone and is impacted by the human practices in all sectors. Just before I end the presentation and we can go to the Q&A, just speaking about the latest advances or what we are currently doing when it comes to the climate change. So at the moment, what's happening in Egypt is I have just been today attending the first advisory group meeting for the National Adaptation Plan. So at the moment, Egypt is creating its first national adaptation plan in terms of the climate change. And of course, health sector is one of the 8 sectors that are focused on or having a great focus when it comes to the national adaptation plan. And this brings us to the question, what are we as WHO together with stakeholders doing? So 2 things that we're doing is the carbon footprint measurement to see how much our healthcare facilities contributing to the climate change, how much greenhouse gas emissions are produced by these facilities, and consequently we'll be able to advocate and motivate the healthcare providers and the health stakeholders how to decrease their carbon footprint and thus adopt or endorse their sustainable practices. In addition, there is something that's called the vulnerability and adaptation assessment, in which we get the data on climate change and get to link it to morbidity and mortality data so that we can see how certain weather events or certain climate change events are leading to certain diseases or certain mortality rates. This also will be supported by, at the moment, the UNDP, which is the United Nations Development Program, which is the main coordinator in terms of the United Nations agencies for the National Adaptation Plan, together with the Ministry of Environment. There will be 2 consultants working on the climate change impact on public health in general and climate change impact on vector-borne diseases. so that we can produce evidence-based data when it comes to the National Adaptation Plan. So that's one. And also when it comes to the supply chain, since we have been speaking about this, there is a special working group on the supply chain within the Attach. What is the Attach? That is an alliance that has been launched by the World Health Organization on the global level during the COP26 in Glasgow, where they launched the Alliance for Transformative Action on Climate and Health. One of the working groups for this alliance is the working group on the supply chains. So this is an opportunity for you to engage and to identify where can we stand when it comes to a supply chain and what do we need to do. And the last thing I would say when it comes to the political events happening worldwide, last COP, the COP that happened in Dubai, there was the health declaration, the first health declaration on climate change and health that was adopted in COP, the last one. And as well in the World Health Assembly that is starting, I guess, in 4 days. In this World Health Assembly, there is a resolution that is presented for adoption on climate change and health. Everyone is looking forward for this resolution because it will be a turning point regarding what needs to be done on climate change, specifically that the WHO is now working on the transformation from its, I would say, like global plan of action. We had the GPW, which is the General Program of Work 13. Now we're transforming to the next one, which is the General Program of Work 14, where climate change is actually a main pillar when it comes to the impact of climate change and its interlinkage on health systems. Of course, this might be things that are happening on the global level or the decision maker level. However, these can only happen or these can only change by your activities, whether when it comes to the education, when it comes to community awareness and community engagement, and of course, when it comes to the research generation and generating evidence-based policy briefs that represent the stances of future healthcare professionals and generally youth who are considered one of the vulnerable or the more vulnerable groups to the climate change. So that's all for now from my side, and of course, happy to receive any questions or comments. Thank you.
So thanks, Dr. Muhammad, for your exceptional presentation. So proceeding to the Q&A part for the first session. If anyone has any question, please write in the chat box. I guess we have a question. Why does the climate change affect the developing countries more, even they are the last participator in the crisis?
Okay, so when it comes to the developing countries, generally the climate change, when it's impacting our resources, we usually, as developing countries, we usually do not have enough resources to mitigate or adapt to these impacts. So for example, when it gets to affect us, it affects the water, it affects the food systems, etc. However, we do not have the enough capacities or the enough finances to be able to adapt or deal with them. So that's why usually the crisis itself, it's produced by greenhouse gas emissions, which are produced in different rates from developed and developing actually, but like more in the developed countries, and thus impact the developing countries who are developing for a reason, because they do not yet have enough resources to be able to address or deal with this climate crisis.
So if anyone still have any question, please write in the chat box. So we will give you 1 more minute, so you can write your question. So Ziad, you can write your question in the chat box. Dr. Muhammad, we have another question. What can we do as an EPS effort to contribute more in controlling this crisis, in your opinion?
So as I mentioned, it's mainly like our role can be more of the education and the advocacy part. So since usually like the healthcare providers, they have the trust of the community and they have the trust of the scientific community as well. So it's the general population and the scientific community. Because technically we are part of the general population and at the same time we're part of the scientific field. So the most important part at the moment is trying to simplify what the science is saying to the general population and try to inform people how they can adapt sustainable practices in their daily lives in order to decrease our contribution to the climate change, or at least be able to adapt to it more on the local level or within our everyday lives. So it's mostly about the education, I would say, and the community engagement and awareness raising, together, of course, with conducting research studies or research projects in order to work on the knowledge, attitudes, and practices of the community, and of course on the other stakeholders as well, and consequently developing advocacy materials that can be used to influence how decision-making is happening on the national level and on the local level when it comes to climate change. So education, awareness raising, research and evidence generation, and advocacy and lobbying in general when it comes to climate change.
Thanks, Dr. Muhammad, for your answer. So, Ziad Gum'a, I guess you have a question. Would you write? Okay. So I think that most of those here are Arabs. So why do we speak English? Not all audience are Arabic audience. We have also speakers will speak English. So not all of us are Arab. So
So I can answer this quickly regarding the awareness and the webinars. It's because of the resources. Yes, we can keep on speaking about climate change, but this also, like this enhances the social commitment towards working on climate change. However, there should also be the political commitment. And that's why there is this annual conference that I was talking about, the Conference of Parties, that happens every year, in which countries go there. They keep on negotiating and they keep on discussing how can we advance the work on climate change. What more resources do we need? What do we need to do in terms of finances? Are there any funds that we need to establish? Are there any funds that we need to enhance? What should developed countries do? What should developing countries do? So all these negotiations keep on taking place every year. And the problem is that still some countries, or many countries, I would say, are still mainly focusing on their own agendas. So it's mostly like people need to understand that this is a global crisis that's affecting everyone. Although it's not affecting them equally, but still everyone is affected with different vulnerabilities. However, this political commitment should take place with this mindset that everyone is affected, and then we will be able to allocate the resources efficiently in order to produce the best outcomes when it comes to addressing climate change.
So, thanks, Dr. Muhammad Isa, for your fruitful presentation. It was much a pleasure to us having you as a speaker in our webinar. Your attendance and participation is much appreciated. So thanks for giving us your time. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me, and have a good day with the rest of the sessions. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Muhammad. Proceeding to the next session about the climate change effect on our environment will be presented by Dr. Raga Magdi, lecturer at the Faculty of Pharmacy, Al Ahram Canadian University, and researcher in green and sustainable chemistry. So, Dr. Raga, can you hear us?
Yes.
Welcome, Dr. Raga. So the floor is yours. You can start now.
Okay. Thank you, Mariam. Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everyone. first, I want to thank Dr. Muhammad Isa for the high informative and high quality session. He already covered much of what I'm going to say today, so I greatly facilitate what I am going to inform you by today. I also want, before I start my discussion, to thank the organizer for their tireless effort and dedication to raising awareness on such a critical issue. I think today mark an important milestone as we gather here EBSF, IPSF, IVPN, and World Health Organization in Egypt to dive into the critical topic. I am a researcher in green and sustainable chemistry for 11 years. I do my master and PhD degree in pharmacy in the field of sustainable and green chemistry. I also study sustainability. I study business. I study a lot of things related to climate and related to sustainability in the three pillars of sustainability. So the main issue is the collaboration. So what is the most important about today is the collaboration and different backgrounds speaking at the same topic, which is great to take an step forward to achieve sustainability and to achieve a progress in the file of climate change. Today, I am here to explore the strong impact of climate change on our environment and more specifically, its amplification for the pharmaceutical field. As we dive in this critical topic, we will uncover the interconnectedness of our action and their consequence on both the natural world and human health. As I mentioned, Dr. Muhammad facilitated a lot of what I'm going to talk about today. So this is outline of what I'm going to talk about. I will discuss what is the climate change in brief, what is the environmental impact of the climate change, and what is the specific amplification of the pharmaceutical field. The climate change, as Dr. Muhammad mentioned, is when the weather pattern over a long period of time start to change. It's like an earth is get warmer, and also it happened because of the greenhouse gases. Simply, the greenhouse gases effect is like when the earth has natural blanket of gases like carbon dioxide and methane. But when we use a lot of cars and factories, we add more of these gases, trapping of heat in the Earth's atmosphere, making the Earth warmer, like a greenhouse. As Dr. Muhammad mentioned, it may occur due to natural causes like volcano eruption, solar variation, or due to human activity like burning fossil fuel, deforestation, industrial process. So why getting warmer is harmful? What happens when it gets warmer? The first effect is raising sea level. When ice melt and water expand, sea level is rise. That means trouble for coastal area. Think erosion eating away at beaches and flood crashing into homes. Coastal erosion gets worse and flooding become more common. It's a big problem for communities living by the sea. Also, climate change may cause extreme weather event. As we all see, Earth might have more storm, flood, droughts that can make it hard for plants, animals, and people to live in some place. People, planet, and animals feel the heat quite literally. It's not just about getting wet or feeling crushed. It's about safety, food, and even our road and building. This extreme event mess with our life. It makes it hard and tough to survive. Climate change also may affect the animal life. It may lead to migration of animals and biodiversity loss. Habitat get destroyed and ecosystem get turned upside down. Some species pack their bags and leave, while others face the risk of disappearing forever. For example, coral refers. For example, coral reefs. For example, they are turned white and live due to something called coral bleaching. Climate change also affects regional impact. It affects Africa due to water scarcity. It may make water become as precious as gold. That's what happened due to increased desertification. And it is not just the land, it is our food too. Agriculture take ahead, putting food security at risk. And now in Asia, imagine the sky forgetting its usual rain schedule. Farmers scratch their head as monsoon patterns change, impacting agriculture. And up in the mountain, glaciers melt faster than ever, messing with river flow and water supply. Also, small island nations. Island life isn't all sunshine anymore. Rising sea level threaten to swallow up home and fresh water sources, putting life in danger. Now that we have explored the region and environmental impact of climate change, let's zoom on how this change affects a vital aspect of our lives as a pharmacist. The pharmaceutical industry and its supply chain, just like any other industry. Pharmaceuticals rely heavily on resources and logistics to ensure the availability of life-saving medicines. So let's take a closer look at how climate change affects pharmaceutical system. First, resource scarcity. Water shortage disrupts drug production. Imagine trying to cook without water or running out of ingredients. That's what happened when water shortage hit manufacturing process and raw material become rare and expensive. Higher raw material costs may make medicine less affordable. Also, supply chain distribution, as Dr. Muhammad mentioned, also affected by the climate change. Extreme weather events had medicine transportation. That's why we need a supply chain that's tough and flexible enough to be ready to adapt to whatever nature throws our way. Now, let's turn our attention to the presence of public health challenge of emerging disease. That's lead to increased demand for vaccine and treatment. As this disease spreads, so it need vaccine and treatment. That may lead to putting pressure on pharmaceutical company to produce enough doses to protect the population. Another public health challenge is healthcare infrastructure change. The picture of healthcare system already stretched thin, now facing an additional burden for climate-induced health issue. I just mentioned without the details of this point, as we already mentioned it with Dr. Muhammad Isa in details. But to be honest, we all share in this. Let's see the bad facts, understanding why I'm saying we all share in it. Each and every second, 310 kilograms of toxic chemicals are released in our air, land, and water by industrial facilities around the world. The amount of approximately 10 million tons of toxic chemicals released into our environment by industrial each year. 2 million tons of this are recognized to be carcinogens. This amount is about 65 kilograms each second. A paper published in 2021 said that only drug pollution affects 11 of the Sustainable Development Goals. It is a Sustainable Development Goals that all the affects the climate change by different means. Only drug pollution affects poverty, which is goal number 1, affect good health and well-being, as Dr. Muhammad mentioned, goal number 3, affect quality education, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economical growth, industrial innovation and infrastructure, reasonable consumption and production. Climate action is that what we talk about mainly today. live blue water, live on land, and finally, partnership for the goals. All these goals affected only by one of our role as a pharmacist. It is a drug pollution. So, what we can do as a pharmacist to facilitate the map and roadmap to the forward going to achieve goals of sustainable development and decrease the climate effects. Now let's shift our focus to actionable steps we can take to improve a pharmaceutical industry and address the challenge we have discussed. It's important to highlight the critical role of sustainability in addressing environmental challenge. The pharmaceutical sector has significant impact on the environment, from the production of medication to their distribution and disposal. Adopting sustainable practice is not only critical for reducing their impact, but also for ensure the long-term viability of our industry. With that in mind, let's explore some key sustainable practices that can help make positive difference. One of the main key pillars of sustainability within the pharmaceutical industry is green chemistry and energy efficiency. These practices are fundamental in reducing environment impact and promoting more sustainable approach to drug manufacture. From adopting sustainable synthesis method to implementing energy-saving technology that will reshape the future of pharmaceutical production. Let's push the boundaries of sustainability in pharmaceutical industry beyond the green chemistry and green efficiency. Another word is innovation. We are talking groundbreaking research, cleaner drug production, and smarter healthcare management to enhance sustainability through the practice in the pharmaceutical field. Another factor we can also manage is reducing the drug pollution. Traditional drug manufacturing can generate significant pollution through solvent use and waste disposal. Sustainable practice involve adapting cleaner production methods such as continuous flow chemistry and solvent recycle, green chemistry, and all ways to minimize waste and reduce the carbon footprint of drug production. Also, we can change the way we manage our healthcare system through sustainable healthcare system. Sustainable healthcare goes beyond the laboratories. It extends to how we manage healthcare system by implementing electronic healthcare records, telemedicine, and optimize supply chain management. We can reduce paper waste, low energy consumption, and improve overall efficiency. Align with the Sustainable Development Goal, as I mentioned before, sustainable practice in the pharmaceutical industry contribute directly to several Sustainable Development Goals by reducing carbon emission, minimizing waste, and promoting access to healthcare. We align our effort with Sustainable Development Goals such as affordable and clean energy, Sustainable Development Goal 7, responsible consumption and production, Sustainable Development Goal 12, and the main goal of us is good health and well-being is a Sustainable Development Goal 3. Green chemistry also contribute to multiple Sustainable Development Goals, clean water and sanitation, Sustainable Development Goal 6, life below water, life on land, responsible consumption and promotion. The pharmaceutical industry is continuously innovating to create a more sustainable future, from eco-friendly pharmaceutical, biodegradable packaging material, green synthesis method to implementing green transportation solution for drug distribution. Every step we take towards sustainable brings us closer to a healthier planet and healthier communities. And as I mentioned, before I start, we have to underscore the significance of global collaboration in driving sustainable efforts forward. Industry, academia, and governments must collaborate to widespread adoption. As we conclude, let's reflect on the importance of our collective responsibility toward the planet. The Earth is what we all have in common, so we have to take care of Earth, all of us, by embracing green practice, advocating for policy change, and prioritizing environmental stewardship in pharmaceutical research and development, and we can chart a course toward a sustainable future. Thank you all for your attention listening, and thank you for the organizer for inviting me to these sessions, and thank you for everything. If you have any question, you're welcome.
Okay, until Mariam is here, I will continue. Thanks, Dr. Raga, for your thoughtful presentation, and thanks for your responsiveness to us and our call to be here in this webinar. We may take 3 minutes of question. If anyone have any question, just type it in the chat box. Okay, if everything is okay, just make any emoji.
So thanks, Dr. Raga, for your exceptional presentation. Proceeding to the Q&A part.
Thank you, Mariam.
We have a question in the chat box. You mentioned green pharmaceutical industry. How does that work in European societies, especially in Egypt?
Okay. Green pharmaceutical industry divided into two parts. The first part is the part relating to the green analysis. It is when you do an analysis in a method of develop a new method of analysis in not very harmful to the environment by replacing the traditional method and traditional technique with others, more greener solvent reduction and using recycle for the waste. All this technique now we're working on to be applied in all the Egyptian manufacturing here. Also, we do a lot of initiative related with the drug with many institutions. I don't remember all of them to mention now, as we still working on this collaboration. We don't have an official deal, so I can't mention the name of this institution. So, but we are already working on a project named Green Pharmaceutical Industry and the Green Pharmacy in Egypt. So we can do it in the first part related to the analysis of the drug, being more green analysis, and the other part in the drug manufacturing, in the packaging, by reducing the packaging material and the waste production. All this affect the pharmaceutical industry to be more green, our shift to be more green and reduce the pollution come from the pharmaceutical industry.
So thanks for answering. We have another question. As a pharmacist, how can I educate the patient field?
As a pharmacist, how can I educate what?
How can I educate the patient about the seriousness of this problem and reduce it through my field?
Okay, if you want to educate the patient about something, the most important one is the medical, the irrational use of drug. You have to mention to the patient how to use a drug properly, especially the antibiotic, as it have a great problem to be used in a bad way. Also, irrational disposal of drugs. You have to educate the patient about what to do with the drugs that have expired in their home, how to dispose of these drugs. Also, you have to mention how to use the drug under the medical supervision, not to choose it without any supervision. Um, this from the pharmaceutical point of view. You can mention something like lifestyle modification, the way he eats, the way he try to live, how to manage the non-communicable disease. We have a big role in the sustainable development and in the climate change and how to educate patient. But we have first, in my opinion, we have to educate well as what you do today. You give a great info to pharmaceutical student to share this info with patient and with other students.
So thanks, Dr. Aga, for your answer. If anyone has any additional question, please write it. We have another question. I think it's deleted. So
I read it before delete. He asked about he asked about the disposal of the drug. Is it affected the climate? Yes, it affects the climate. We mentioned here that the drug pollution only affect 11 of the sustainable development goal. One of them is the climate action. So the drug pollution come from many means. One of this is the disposal of drug. Also, a lot of study done in drug pollution and in the presence of antibiotic in the environment and the link between the animal diseases and human disease. All of this environmental impact, part of this environmental impact come from the drug pollution. That one of this method of drug pollution is the disposal of expired drug. So we have to educate patient and educate ourselves how to disposal of this expired drug.
So thanks, Dr. Ragat, for your answer. I guess we have no more questions. Special thanks for Dr. Ragat for your time. You did an impressive presentation. Thanks for giving us your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we will proceed to the third session about the climate change or the climate adaptation and resilience, which will be presented by IPSF representative, Ms. Eugene. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear.
Yeah, now you have the floor. You can start.
Yeah. Hi everyone. Did you guys? Hi everyone. Thank you for being here. And my name is Eugene Kwon, IPSF United Nations IPSF, which stands for United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Program Director. And I'll introduce the details of my federation later. Today, I'd like to talk about climate adaptation and resilience. Oh, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. Yeah. In this presentation, we'll dive into the concepts of climate adaptation, resilience, and the work of the International Pharmaceutical Students Federation in this area. Next, please. Did you know our planet is facing unprecedented challenges due to climate change? Today, we'll explore how we can adapt and build resilience to protect our communities and environment. And I'll be brief here as the two former speakers have covered it perfectly. Climate change is a global phenomenon caused by human activities leading to rising temperatures, extreme weather events, and shift in ecosystems. Next, please. Our planet is experiencing more frequent heat waves, storms, and floods. Sea levels are also rising, threatening coastal communities. Biodiversity also loss affects ecosystems and human health. So what is climate adaptation? Climate adaptation involves adjusting to the changing climate and its impacts. Now I'll talk about some climate adaptation examples. First, building flood barriers and improve infrastructures on community level would be an action to adapt in some changing climates. Also, health systems must prepare for disease outbreaks related to climate shift. Last, individuals can adopt water-saving practices and plant drought-resistant crops. Next, climate resilience. Climate resilience is our ability to cope with and recover from climate-related challenges. There are several strategies to cope with and recover from climate-related challenges. I will introduce some examples. First, diversity resources. Ensure access to clean water, energy, and food will help us to adapt to climate change. And strengthen social networks such as supporting each other, during crisis, and enhancing health systems like preparing for emergencies and prioritize preventive care can also improve our ability to improve climate resilience. And now, what the Federation IPSF do for the climate change and related to health issues. First, I will introduce the IPSF now. IPSF is the leading international advocacy organization for pharmacy and pharmaceutical science students and recent graduates, promoting improved public health through the provision of information, education, networking, and range of publications and professional initiatives. And let me introduce our mission. Our mission is to improve public health by advancing pharmacy practice and pharmaceutical science, also responding to global changes in health education, and workforce strategy. Lastly, in serving as global collective voice of students and recent graduates in pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences. And here's our allied organizations, including those involved in climate change and environmental health as United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, WHO, United Nations Environment Program. And also GCHA, Global Climate and Health Alliance, and YONGO, which stands for Official Children and Youth Constituency of United Nations Climate Change Processes, are our allied organizations related to climate change. Our public health portfolio among diverse portfolio of IPSF focuses on 17 programs, including UNFCCC. And let me introduce IPSF's work in climate health until now. First, we did commentary on the global health community and international climate change negotiations in BMJ Global Health. This is a magazine about climate change, and you can see our work through this QR code. Also, we've done and we are now operating some online campaigns, and we participated at COP27 and COP28, and we will also planning to participate in COP29 too. And we released a global declaration on climate change, the environment, and sustainable healthcare. What is the role of pharmacy? In which it calls up the pharmaceutical industry to recognize its impact on the environment. Also, we released a position paper on climate change, recommending the introduction of climate change in health education. Furthermore, IPSF delivered a statement at the 72nd WHA World Health Assembly on Health, Environment, and Climate Change, calling on WHO and member states to strengthen the monitoring of air pollution, implementation of targeted policies, and raise awareness and guarantee the protection of vulnerable groups. And you can see that our works are focused on pharmacy and pharmaceutical students and young graduates, but the purpose of all of our works are for the public health and improvement of health worldwide. And now here's the conclusion of today's speech. Each of us can make a huge progress toward a better and sustainable world. Students can have a powerful voice in advocating for positive change by raising awareness, collaborating, and actively participating. You can contribute significantly to climate adaptation and resilience efforts. Here's some of our suggestions. First, awareness and education. We can organize workshops and webinars, like hosting sessions to educate students about climate change, its impacts and importance of adaptation and resilience. Collaboration with other student organizations would be synergistic. And also curriculum integration. As students and young graduates, we can advocate for including climate-related topics in pharmacy and healthcare curricula. Second, collaboration and partnerships. Collaboration with environmental organizations, universities, and community groups would be synergistic too. And we also can engage with pharmaceutical companies to promote sustainable practice and research. Third, to make changes in the social level, we can take actions for policy advocacy. For instance, conducting research on climate policies and our impact on healthcare systems, and advocating for policies that prioritize climate resilience in pharmaceutical practice. Last but definitely not least, innovation and research is also necessary. How about why don't we encourage research on climate resilience, drug supply, change, and storage, and promote eco-friendly practice within pharmacies? Yeah. Let's make small steps, whether it's reducing our carbon footprint or supporting climate-friendly policies to create healthier, more resilient world. Thank you for attention, and feel free to ask questions if you have any.
So thanks, Miss Eugene, for your impressive presentation. Hope my voice is clear now.
Yeah, I
Just
can
wanna
hear.
make, yeah, thanks for your impressive presentation and thanks for your time. Q&A part for this session. I'll give you 1 minute. If anyone has any question, please write it in the chat box. So I guess we have no questions. Thanks, Ms. Eugene, for your time, and thanks for IPSF for providing us with such an impressive speaker. Thank you. You made great. So we will proceed to our last session about climate change effects on different life aspects, including human health. Our presenter will be Dr. Rafa Al Khalifa. Dr. Rafa, IVPN Global Health Lecture Leader and Professional Development Team in FIB Early Career Pharmaceutical Group. So, Dr. Rafa, can you hear me?
Yes, you can hear me well?
Yeah, we can hear you well. So, Dr. Rafa, now you can start. The floor is yours.
You can see my screen also, right?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Mariam, and thank you everyone from the organizers. Special thanks to Ahmed and the IVPN student, and thank you for APSF and for having me today. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning wherever you are. And I hope that this session will be few minutes of informative and interesting, slides going on. So my name is Rafa Al Khalifa, and I'm the leader of IVPN Global Health Listserv. I'm also part of the International Pharmaceutical Federation Early Career Pharmaceutical Group, the professional development team. And I'm also working as Associate Director of Specialty Pharmacy Services at Thika Pharmacy, UAE. So let's start our presentation by a brief intro about the IVPN network. So IVPN, it's a network that was founded in 2012 by a group of pharmacy clinicians from the Gulf region. IVPN network is specialized in knowledge transfer that intends to reshape and transform the pharmacy practice regionally and globally. IVPN network offers consulting, event management, medical writing, manpower engagement, and mentorship services. The IVPN network philosophy is about creating a culture of knowledge and practice exchange, discovering talents, experts, and leaders, empowering them, and making them known and visible. IVPN network offers more than 12 different listservs and with more than 25,000 subscriptions. Through these listserv or the platform that we provide, IVPN members and experts communicate on relevant topics with the intention of global pharmacy practice exchange and knowledge transfer. The listservs are some of them, yet we have more that started in 2024. The main hospital pharmacy, the student, the global health, oncology, research, journal club, voice, personalized medicine, regulatory, and neuroscience. and others, as I mentioned. You can also check our website for the previous recordings and all the knowledge that you can get from there. So now going to our agenda. Yes. So the first topic that we will speak about is the urgent health imperative of climate change action, the intersection between SDG 3 and SDG 13. If you did, I believe, like from the great presentations before me, you got an information about them if you are not aware of them, but we will also delve deeper in this presentation. Also, the last thing will be the side effects of climate change in health. And here there is some flavor of pharmacy coming there. So yeah, before we go with the agenda point, I want to share with you a real story that we passed through last month, and it was due to this topic. And also it affects the health component. It happened where I live. The UAE, United Arab Emirates, we had a flood, and because of heavy rain for the first time since 75 years. So it was a historical event that happened last month. And reputable channels and newsletters were highlighting that this was a climate change effect, and it's because of the global warming and so on. Because we, as I mentioned, we did not used to have such thing, and it was thanks to the authorities that acted rapidly, but it paralyzed our life like somehow for 1 week. So here is a photo from from the window of my home. So here, very near in my neighborhood, there was you know, those buildings where the people inside them, they were displaced, and we will come to those terminologies now in the upcoming slides. So they were displaced, and also there was water contamination, all that after the flood. So there was water contamination. The Ministry of Health and Prevention started sending announcements that you need to be aware not to use the water without you know, doing the hygienic steps and so on. In order to avoid the cases that can come to the emergency department because of the water contamination and so on. So that happened last month, and thanks God, as I mentioned, that the response was very fast, and within 1 week everything was cleared out, despite that this was affecting the whole country. So I wanted to share this experience because it was real, it was devastating for us, and it was something like we did not pass through before, and it is related to climate change. So the first thing I wanted to bring this quote, or this like few sentences that Dr. Tedros, from the Director General of the World Health Organization, he mentioned about the urgent health imperative of climate action, and that we need very fast action to combat the climate change. He said that climate change is already having a serious impact on human lives and health. It threatens the basic elements we all need for good health, such as clean air, safe drinking water, nutritious food supply, and safe shelter, and will undermine decades of progress in global health. We can't afford to delay action any further. So if you can see, like, yeah, we are speaking in our medical colleges. We do not talk a lot about everything mentioned here. Like, yeah, we have it passing through the curricula that we have, but there is very solid interrelation between all the elements in the community that we have. And this concept is called the One Health. One Health is an initiative by the WHO. It says that in order to have a very good or high quality human health, you need also to care about the environmental health. You need to care about the animal health. And it's like a cycle that drops in each, each one of them is dropping in the other. So in order to have a very good human health, we need to ensure that there is an integrated and unifying approach which aims to sustainably balance and optimize the health of people, animals, and ecosystems. And this is literally what the SDGs and my previous speakers, they have highlighted also, that everything is interrelated. So here now we come to the intersection between the SDG 3 and SDG 13. So SDG 13 is the one which is related to the climate change, and the one that we speak about a lot in the healthcare field is SDG 3, which calls for to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. So the climate change SDG, it calls to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. Both of them, they affect each other. So like, for example, the intensity of extreme weather events, immediately it will affect the health. How? By rising the sea levels and changing the pattern in infectious disease distribution, changing the habitat of some insects and mosquitoes and so on. And we will come in detail and see what the studies and researches have come up with. But those are one of the major issues that affects the health because of the climate change and the impacts coming from that. Also, the frequency of extreme weather events, this will increase the migration. And if you remember in the story that I told you about in the beginning of this presentation, the people in my neighborhood, they were displaced to another hotel in order to be because the water contamination caused by flood, which was caused by climate change and global warming, they needed to be displaced. Yes, they went to hotel, but still they left their homes suddenly without any preparation or something. So this kind of migration, it can be on a bigger level. In like we can say like UAE, somehow it can be considered a developed country. If it happens in countries which are developing countries, this might cause it might destroy buildings. It can even in my country, Sudan, where I come from, when it happens, the floods, people might lose their homes. They might need to move to other cities in the country and so on. So it's something devastating, and also it will have its impact on mental health. It will have its impact on the physical health, because a lot of diseases can arise from that. So this will impact the social determinants of health also. The education might be delayed. The economical status of the people might be affected, or if this happen, definitely this will be affected. So all that will be affecting, and all that will drop also to the mental health point. The last thing here I would like to correlate between both, that the global health sector, it have a lot of Dr. Raja before me, she mentioned about the pharmaceutical industry and the emissions from that. But not only the pharmaceutical industry, the hospitals, the waste, when we burn the medical waste, when a lot of stuff that are resultants of the healthcare services, can like have greenhouse emissions, and it will it's even counted to be like 4.4 to 5.2% of the world's greenhouse gases. So this will of course affect the global warming, and it will generate the same cycle. So this is briefly the intersection between both the SDGs. Now we can move to the last agenda point, which is related to the side effects of climate change in health. So side effects, I believe like most of the audience are pharmacists. So you know that side effects are unexpected events which can be therapeutic, or they can be adverse, like they can be something favorable or something unfavorable. So do you think that, of course, we know that there are unfavorable side effects. Do you think that there are favorable side effects for climate change? If we can check how many from the audience like think about this. Do we have interactive way to know this, or?
Yeah, they can write in the chat box and I will read to you.
Okay, perfect. So if you agree with that there are some favorable side effects of climate change in health, then please reply yes. If you don't think so, they are all unfavorable, then you would reply no. Okay, so anything you received?
Okay, we have a poll. So
Okay,
we
now
have yes and no.
yeah, we have yes and no. Okay. So there will be a debate then by then.
58% and now 62%.
Yeah.
67.
It seems like yes is
yes.
winning, no? Yeah. Okay, so great. So let's see in the upcoming slides if there are favorable effects of or side effects of the climate change. So shall we close it? Or we wait for a few seconds? Yeah, I think we can now move on. Yes. Okay. Okay, so let's start with the unfavorable side effects. So here, the U.S. Global Change Research Program, they conducted a research to check the impacts of climate change on human health in the United States. So you can see like climate impacts in the climate change impact can range from you know it can cause storms, it can cause you can hear a lot of fires that happens in the forests in America, in Spain, in a lot of places. Yeah, US usually we hear about this, but currently we started hearing about it around the world and in places that we did not used to hear about it earlier, similar to the floods that I mentioned about UAE. So also the level of the sea increases, and this also might cause floods, the rains as well, the global warming and high temperature, and we will come and see how it will affect the mental health and how it will affect our physical health as well. And in return, the unstable, you know, flow of water, the very high temperature and so on, all that will affect also the plants. And this, by then, it will all drop to the One Health, you know, a vessel which shows that everything will be interrupted and everything will be disturbed. So now we will speak about the health effects one by one. Regarding the medical and physical health, there will be some changes in fitness and activity level. You can feel it yourself, like when there are when the sun is very hot and the temperature is very high. Usually you will tend to be, you know, at home, like, yeah, you don't like to go out. You try to go with car. If there is any, you know, a 5-minute thing, you will not walk, you will not ride the bicycle and so on. So this is a common sense, like, and the WHO have mentioned that there are some reports that says that if the activity, if the population is more active, we would have reserved or eliminated about 5 million deaths per year. So you can see how activity is very important and how the climate change would affect the human health by just decreasing the activity. Other than this, there are the heat-related illnesses, like, you know, the body will start the blood. Usually, the blood regulates our temperature inside the body. So it starts, you know, they lose the balance and going up, going down, and it will not be like properly regulated inside the body, and this will cause some heart heat exhaustion. It might cause heat stroke and also dehydration if there is a lot of, you know, people cannot in some areas people cannot drink enough water. They don't have like proper water supply, and also the temperature is high, so this is very challenging for them. Allergies will increase. Allergies, including also asthma and respiratory conditions. Why those will happen? Because the pollution will increase. Like when we have a storm, when we have floods, and so on. So the fires, also pollution, air pollution will increase. Will increase all these allergies and respiratory issues. The last point is regarding the you remember when I mentioned about the habitat, like some of the insects like mosquito and so on, they will find it a very good place to grow and to be there, even for the water. When I told you about the Ministry of Health and Prevention in UAE, when they started announcing that there is water contamination, try to avoid to drink the water, the like unhygienic water, or the not the clean water, and so on, because some of the insects, some of the microorganisms and so on that are causing us harm, they might start, you know, growing and increasing their habitat, and they will feel happy with such you know, disturbed conditions. So malaria is one of the diseases, cholera and so on. Moving to the mental health, of course, we have highlighted this in many parts of the presentations. Like when you let's start, like, you know, with the first slide, when I told you about the people who were displaced from their place, from their place. This like instability causes a kind of you know, anxiety. There is even a term which is called like climate anxiety, and there is also another term which is called climate refugees. So people do not you know, move from place to another place only because of war and conflicts and so on. No, also because of climate change and climate issues and complications. And this is really happening now, and it's really affecting, and we can see it, and we can relate it to you know, day by day events. So mental health, it can include stress, anxiety, depression, grief, and also those can like the post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. This also can happen if the fire, you know, you can name it, whatever climate complication or impact from those, they can have, you know, a very bad impact to one's life. So those can happen, and they have been you know, documented. So this is one thing. Also, strains on social relationships. If you are not good, and you are feeling depressed and so on, of course, all your relationships or all your dealings with everyone, it will be affected. And this is one area. Substance abuse, of course, when you are, many people go to that trap when they are feeling low, feeling depressed, and they have many issues and so on. Even displacement and the change in the economical status and so on, all that can affect and drop to this. Last thing is the community health. It was studied by this paper, and I have added also some points from the WHO Euro Health and Climate Action Brief Policy to this to make it more comprehensive. So regarding the community health, they found that there will be increased interpersonal aggression. So people between each other, they will maybe especially when we are in Ramadan, people are fasting. They are not eating well. They go out to their work, and the sun is mashallah, that's very, very hot, and the temperature also is very high. People even sometimes they start shouting without without any reason, and they sometimes start beating each other and so on. So this kind of interpersonal aggression, it happens when a lot of factors are there. It's incorrect, yeah, and people should try to avoid it, but yeah, it happens sometimes. External factors might affect this. So this is one thing, the violence and crime, since there is immigration, displacement and so on, all that can affect, and there is economical status going down, all that might be affected. Social instability, we spoke about it, and also decreased community cohesion, because there will be people will be moving around, from place to another place. There will be new people coming there, a lot of issues for everyone to handle themselves, so no one is ready to handle others and so on. So yeah, let's move to this part, which is the people who said yes. They are the one who won this debate. So there are favorable side effects of climate change in health, and one of them, and you can see it very clearly nowadays, the digital health. Everyone is moving towards that digital health, digital therapeutics, and everyone everywhere, they are trying to see how to start this stuff in I have been to the World Health the last World Health Assembly, and there were a lot of discussions, side events, and even some statements were delivered regarding this point. So people are moving towards this, and this is one. The climate change is one of the main drivers for this, because green healthcare, circular healthcare, all these terminologies, they are terminologies related to the climate change and the discussions coming around the climate change. So this is one of the positive effects of the climate change. Other than this, in some countries, and also the countries which are some of the policymakers, they started preparing some places for people to have to have a walk, or to ride a bicycle, special roads for that. So even policymakers, they started encouraging this. Of course, it will be practical in some countries, and some other countries, they are still navigating, how to make it happen, because of the high temperature there. But also we started seeing a lot of Teslas, around us, and a lot of cars which are electric cars going around. So this is also related to the the development and innovation in the transportation. And now they say that 1 in 5 new cars sold in 2023 like they were electric cars. So yeah, so this is being a real thing, and we can see it around us, we can relate. So there is also a health shift to renewable energy, and this could impact temperature rise and air pollution. So people are like, even there are some reports that US started to use the wind energy, like generated from the wind, and also the sun, the renewable energy, the solar energy system, and so on. They started being very common, even like on individual level. People, even I have a colleague in Lebanon. She told me, like, because there are a lot of electrical cuts, so we have this solar system in Sudan as well. My relatives, they had that. So it became something also affordable. So this is also a point to which shows that the policymakers are supporting this. And all this, like when you decrease the air pollution, as we mentioned, you will help the health. So less respiratory issues and allergies will be there. When you have like active transportation, this will have better physical activity, and this will also decrease the deaths and so on. The last thing here is this is my photo in one of the COP 28, where it shows that it was a competition run by the government here. It was the name is Pitch@Gov, and it was for all the sustainable solutions. They gathered many people who are proposing sustainable solutions in different sectors or areas, and I went with my colleague. We had an idea about its circular waste management system. So using the digital health, and also it will decrease the healthcare waste. So we went and we presented, and this shows that the policymakers are also supporting this, incentivizing it, and also they are caring to move the thinking towards that. And this is not only in UAE, it's a global, as I mentioned, like in the World Health Assembly, they were discussing this. So this is also one important point, that people started moving towards sustainable and circular health system. By this, I ended my presentation. If you have any questions.
So thanks, Dr. Rafa, for your impressive presentations. So if anyone has any question, please write in the chat box. We will give you just 1 minute to receive your questions.
Yes, and I will share with you my LinkedIn account. Let's connect to each other. Thank you so much. If you have any questions. Thank you, Mariam.
Thanks, Dr. Rafa, for your time. It's our pleasure having you in our session. So I guess we have no questions in the chat box. Now we have reached to the end of our webinar. So let's proceed to the closure words from EPSF representative and IVPN representative. So we'll start with Mr. Abdurrahman Yunus, EPSF Public Health Chairperson. So if you would like to say anything, the floor is yours.
Okay. Is my voice clear now, guys?
Can you raise your voice?
Okay, just wait.
Now it's good, right?
Yeah, it's clear now.
Okay. Firstly, we started working on this webinar 2 months ago, me and Ahmed. By luck, we meet on LinkedIn and decided to organize a webinar and organize a collaboration, not just in climate change, there is future collaborations. But I really need to thank Ahmed for his efforts, thanking all IVPN for their efforts, thanking every attendee who is attending here, thanking for every doctor who has participated with us today, Dr. Isa, Dr. Rafa, Miss Eugene, and Dr. Raga. I want to speak Arabic. Let me to talk to audience in Arabic. Okay. يعني حابب أشكركم كلكم حقيقة يا شباب يعني على الحضور بتاعكم. يعني بجد الاجتهاد والناس اللي موجودة من أول ميتنج للآخر. يعني معلش كان ممكن كان صعب الفهم شوية الويبينر عشان it was in English مثلا، بس هو عشان كان معانا speakers طبعا هو النيتيف لانجوج بتاعتهم is English. كان معانا برضو يعني ناس attendees هم برضو مش هيقدروا يفهموا نيتيف لانجوج عربي يعني. فبجد يعني شكرا لكم، شكرا لكل الناس، شكرا خصيصا للبي اتش تشير بيرسونز اللي موجودين دلوقتي. يعني البروموشن بتاعكم للويبينر هو اللي خلانا موجودين، والاتنديز والعدد الكبير ده موجود دلوقتي. بكرر شكر تاني يا احمد بجد على المجهود اللي احنا عملناه ده وعلى المساعده بتاعتك. شكرا يا لين، شكرا يا ضحى برضو لو موجوده. شكرا لكل الدكاترة طبعا، شكرا برضو لمريم على المودريشن العظيم جدا للويبينر بجد يعني. فيعني ممكن اسيب المايك لأحمد بقى لو عايز يقول أي حاجة يعني. فشكرا لكم يا شباب.
شكرا على كل الكلام الحلو ده يا عبد الرحمن. يعني first of all بس يعني I would love to thank everyone and each one of you, especially the participants يعني. And also I would love to thank our speakers and organizers, specifically Dr. Rafa and also Dr. Raja and also Dr. Muhammad and also Mrs. Kwan. And I would love to thank you a special thanks to EBSF for accepting our invitation to be with us in this webinar. And also a special thank to you Abdurrahman. يعني it was a pleasure meeting you on LinkedIn يعني. واكيد يعني اكمل كلامي بالعربي يعني احتراما للغتنا وثقافتنا يعني. يعني الشكر ليك جدا وشكرا لكل الناس اللي موجوده في اي بي اس اف، سواء الوركينج جروب معانا وسواء الشير بيرسونز في الجمعيات. وشكرا لمريم، يعني اوريدي كنت اتكلمت معاكي من قبل الايفنت ده اوريدي يعني. this is not our first collaboration يعني as a EBSF و IVPN. شكرا جدا ليكم لكل الناس اللي حضرت وموجوده للاخر يعني. thank you so much. والسو يعني ما فيش اي attendance form. يعني attendance will be يعني taken automatically من الزوم. وان شاء الله recording هيكون موجود على الويب سايت IVPN student IVPN network sorry. I will attach the website link on the chat box. You can access whenever or whatever you want.
So thanks, Mr. Abdurrahman, and thanks, Mr. Ahmed, for your words. Now we have reached the last of the last part of our session. Special thanks for our participants and attendees. Special thanks for our speakers, Dr. Rafa, Dr. Raja, Ms. Eugene, and Dr. Muhammad Isa. Also, I'd like to continue in Arabic. I hope it's not our last collaboration between EPS